"Mate with me, human," the alien queen whispered. What happened next changed everything. Commander Elias Ward had faced many things in his life. Deep space storms, long missions where the silence of the void threatened to swallow him whole, and the loneliness that came with being the first human in places no one had ever walked. He had stared into the eyes of planets long dead, and had seen stars collapse, their light fading into black nothingness. He had survived, adapted, and learned to trust his instincts. But nothing had ever made his hand shake like this. He stood inside a transparent containment chamber aboard the exploration vessel Aurora's Reach, a state-of-the-art ship that had traveled decades through dark stretches of space. The chamber was built for safety, and perhaps for diplomacy. But safety had little meaning now. Outside the glass, the rest of the crew watched from the control deck, their expressions a mix of awe, fear, and disbelief. Humanity had traveled for decades searching for intelligent life. For centuries, humans had looked up at the stars and wondered if they were truly alone. And now, they had found it. And it had chosen him. The being in the chamber was called the Queen by the scientists, though Elias knew the title could not capture the truth of what she was. She was unlike anything he had ever seen or imagined. She was tall, elegant, almost ethereal, with skin that shimmered as if it were made of liquid light. Strands of soft silver energy floated behind her like delicate ribbons in water. Her eyes were enormous, luminous, and intelligent, capturing not just sight but thought itself. She was beautiful, but not in the human sense. Her beauty was something beyond physical form. It was a presence that made the mind feel small, as if one had glimpsed the universe itself reflected in a single living being. Elias had volunteered to be the first human to communicate with her. The neural translator implant at his temple glowed faintly, linking his thoughts to her alien signals. For 3 days they had exchanged ideas. Concepts, emotions, thoughts that could not be spoken in words. Their communication was slow, careful, delicate. Today, however, felt different. The Queen's gaze followed him as he moved through the chamber. She did not raise a hand. She did not speak aloud. She did not show any sign of hostility. Then her voice came. Not in words spoken aloud, but directly inside his mind. "Mate with me, human." Elias froze. His body stiffened. His heart slammed violently against his ribs. Above the chamber, the crew gasped. The senior scientists exchanged hurried, panicked whispers. The captain's voice came sharp and commanding through the comm system. "Silence!" Elias forced himself to breathe. His hands, trembling, rested lightly on the smooth glass of the chamber. "Clarify," he said slowly, aware that his thoughts were translating into signals she could understand. The Queen tilted her head slightly, studying him with her luminous eyes. "Your species bonds to share life, to build future, to join bloodlines. This is known." Elias felt a chill run through him. "You want a child?" "Not only a child," she replied gently, "a bridge." The lights of the chamber dimmed subtly as the ship's systems adjusted to the spike of alien energy. Her form shimmered brighter, but her calmness never wavered. "My people are dying." Her words struck deeper than anything he had ever heard. He felt the weight of centuries of silence and despair compressed into that simple statement. Images flooded into his mind. Vast cities built of crystal towers beneath skies of violet and indigo, filled with light and life, all now fading into emptiness. Star systems gone dark, their civilization once radiant was collapsing. Their species could not survive without the energy their planet provided, and that energy was fading. Within generations, they would simply cease to exist. Elias tried to respond quickly. "We can help." "Medicine, technology, engineering." "You do not understand," she said softly. "Our survival is not of machines. It is of continuance. Your species adapts. For many of us, researchers can find crucial debates. Your biology survives everywhere. Ours does not." Another wave of images hit him, DNA strands intertwining with patterns of glowing alien energy, showing what a hybrid could be. Not a weapon, not a soldier, something new, able to live in both worlds. Elias swallowed hard. "You want to mix our species?" "Yes," she replied. Up on the control deck, the senior xenobiologist muttered, almost to himself. Impossible. But the Queen's presence pressed gently against Elias's mind again, almost coaxing him. "You are genetically compatible. Rare. Your presence was not random." A deep shiver ran down his spine. "You guided us here? Only slightly. You still chose to come." Her honesty was unnerving. The idea that his journey had been subtly influenced by an alien intelligence made him feel small, and yet it also filled him with awe. Elias studied her carefully. There was no hunger in her gaze. No threat, only a deep, desperate hope, and a truth that humans rarely faced, the possibility that the survival of another species might depend on his choice. "Why ask?" he said quietly. "You are more advanced. You could take what you want." Her glow dimmed just slightly, as if a small sadness passed through her, because survival without consent is extinction of the soul. Her words lingered. Elias felt them pressing into him, not as commands, but as a question. What kind of being did he want to be in the face of the impossible? She stepped closer to the glass. The chamber thrummed with a gentle hum, soft as a heartbeat, a pulse that seemed to sync with his own. "Your kind fights, competes, but you also protect the weak. You form bonds beyond logic. That is why we chose humanity." Elias felt the enormity of the moment. This was not a decision about him alone. It was a decision about the bridge between two species, two civilizations. He glanced back toward the control room where his team stared at him. Their eyes were wide, voices caught in silent panic. And yet, no one intervened. It was his choice. Alone, he was the decision-maker, and the weight of it pressed down on him. "What happens?" he asked slowly, almost in a whisper. "If I say no?" There was no hesitation in her answer. "Then we fade, and your people will carry the memory that they could have saved us. No anger, no blame. Only truth." Elias closed his eyes. His thoughts drifted to Earth, the crowded cities, the laughing children, the endless conflicts over borders and politics that suddenly seemed so small. Compared to this cosmic moment, humanity had dreamed of touching the stars. Now the stars were asking something in return. He opened his eyes, meeting hers. "I can't answer alone," he said, voice low. "I'm not Earth. I'm just one man." The Queen studied him, her radiant eyes full of understanding. Then she nodded. "That is why you are the right one." The chamber doors remained sealed. Outside, the galaxy stretched an endless black speckled with stars. And between two species, a decision hung like fragile glass, trembling but alive with possibility. Elias realized something afterward. This moment would define not just his life, but the future of two civilizations. The pressure was immense, but strangely, it also brought clarity. The Queen's presence was not a threat. She offered hope, a chance to connect across the impossible distances of biology, culture, and time. He took a deep breath, feeling the hum of the chamber, the quiet thrum of her energy, and the weight of human history, a bridge between worlds, a choice between fear and hope, a future waiting to be shaped. Elias knew the next steps would not be easy. But for the first time in a long while, he felt the stirrings of courage, and somewhere in the quiet of the ship, across the vast darkness of space, the first threads of a new story began to weave themselves into existence. The hum of the chamber had settled, but the tension in Elias's chest did not. He paced slowly, feeling the weight of the Queen's presence even without her actively touching his mind. Outside the glass walls, the crew still watched in nervous silence, unsure if he would retreat or step forward. He had spent 3 days in preparation for contact. He had read every report about intelligent alien life, every theory about first contact, every cautionary tale, yet nothing in his training had prepared him for this. The responsibility of choosing the survival of an entire species, a species so alien that every thought, every feeling seemed beyond comprehension. Elias's communicator buzzed faintly. The captain's voice came through, careful but firm. "Commander Ward, status?" Elias exhaled slowly, trying to calm his racing thoughts. "Stable," he said finally. "We need time." "Understood," the captain replied, "but the board wants immediate updates." Elias nodded, though she couldn't see him. Updates were meaningless here. They could not understand what it meant to face something so alive, so different, and yet so connected to the very essence of life itself. He stepped back and studied the Queen again. She had moved closer to the center of the chamber, her luminous eyes fixed on him. Her glow pulsed gently, almost like she was breathing, though she had no lungs he could see. "You do not speak," she said. Her words came directly into his mind again, soft but insistent. "I am thinking," he replied. "This, what you ask, it is not something simple." It is not something I can decide quickly." "We know," she said, almost tenderly. "Decision is always difficult, but difficulty does not lessen the necessity." The words lingered. Elias felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him, and yet he also felt something lighter, curiosity, fascination, and a deep sense of honor. He was the first human to be asked this, and he had to find a way to respond that would honor both species. "Tell me," he said slowly, "why me? Why not someone else?" The Queen paused, and for a moment her energy dimmed. Then she answered, and it was not in words, but in images and emotions that flowed directly into his mind. He saw stars, planets, the long journeys of humans through space, and finally, himself. Alone in the cockpit of the Aurora's Reach, making decisions that would ripple across galaxies. "You are rare," she said. "Your biology, your spirit, your choices, they align with what we need. You are not the first of your kind, but you are the first to whom we can safely entrust this." Elias's heart thudded. "And if I refuse, then our path ends. But your people will continue. You will not be harmed. We will fade. That is the choice." A silence followed. The ship's hum, the faint whir of machinery, even the distant stars outside the viewport, all of it seemed to pause. Elias realized that this was more than a choice about life and survival. It was about trust, about courage, and about understanding a being who thought and lived in a way so alien that even his most advanced neural translator could only hint at the truth. He walked to the edge of the chamber and pressed his hand against the glass. The Queen mirrored him, her energy flowing softly against the barrier. It was as if they were reaching for each other across a space they could not yet cross physically, but emotionally. The connection was undeniable. "I fear," he admitted aloud, though she felt the words before he spoke them, "that I cannot understand what it truly means. That I will fail." Her glow softened, comforting rather than commanding. The turfist disappears and fun intense. Understanding comes with patience. Failure is part of the journey. That is why we ask not only for your body, but for your mind, your spirit, your willingness to learn. Elias closed his eyes. He thought of Earth, of crowded cities, of humans who struggled to protect each other, of children who dreamed of the stars. Could he be the bridge she spoke of? Could humanity take this step, trust this unknown, and carry it forward? Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed to lose meaning in the chamber. The Queen did not demand, did not urge, did not judge. She waited, and in her waiting, Elias found a strange clarity. He remembered a lesson from his training. The most important decisions are not made with fear, they are made with understanding. He opened his eyes and focused. "Show me more," he said. Her response was immediate. Images, feelings, and experiences poured into his mind. He saw her world again, the crystal cities, the flowing rivers of light, the beings who moved with grace and harmony, living in symbiosis with their energy-rich environment. And then he saw their struggle, the collapse of that energy, the dimming of cities, the slow fading of life. He realized something vital. The Queen was not asking him to simply create a hybrid child. She was asking him to create a future, to give her species a chance to continue, to evolve, and to survive alongside humanity without either losing their essence. Elias staggered slightly, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of it. It is more than I imagined, he admitted. It is always more than imagined, the Queen said. Every journey worth taking is. He nodded, understanding. This was a trial, not of strength, not of skill, but of character. Could he rise to the responsibility? Could he trust himself to make a decision that would affect not only his life, but the lives of countless beings across the galaxy? Elias turned back to the control deck. The crew waited, tension written on every face. He wanted to tell them it was safe, that there was no danger, but they could not feel what he felt. They could not see the bridge that existed in the quiet space between him and the Queen. He raised a hand, signaling them to wait. Then he turned back to her. I need to understand fully, he said. I need to know what our children, our bridge, would mean for both our species, what life would be like, how they would live, how we would exist together. The Queen tilted her head, her eyes shining brighter with understanding. That is why this is a trial, she said, to see not only your courage, but your willingness to learn and to adapt, to see if you can walk a path not only for yourself, but for the lives of many. Elias felt a mixture of fear and awe. He had trained for crises, for decisions under pressure, for life-and-death situations. But this trial was different. This was about empathy, about understanding a being so far removed from him, yet connected in ways that challenged every assumption he had ever held about life. He thought of Earth again, of the human capacity to survive, to adapt, to love, to build. Perhaps humanity was not yet ready for such a bridge. And yet, perhaps it was precisely this capacity that made him the right person. He stepped closer to the chamber once more. I accept the trial, he said. The Queen's glow pulsed with what Elias interpreted as approval. Not triumph, not victory, but acknowledgement. The trial had begun. Immediately, she reached out with her energy, not touching him physically, but forming a connection that was intimate, respectful, and full of meaning. Images of potential futures filled his mind. Cities shared by humans and her species. Hybrid children growing, learning, and exploring the stars together. The possibilities were dizzying, overwhelming, and yet full of hope. Hours passed, or maybe it was days. Elias could not tell. The chamber hummed softly, the ship's systems maintaining their gentle rhythm. He was tested with simulations, visions, and emotional connections. Each one forced him to confront his fears, his prejudices, and his assumptions. Each one demanded patience, understanding, and the courage to act not just for himself, but for something much greater. At times he faltered, doubts filled his mind. Could he truly do this? Could humanity accept such a future? Could he honor the Queen's trust and the hope of her species? Each time the Queen's presence calmed him. She never judged, she guided. She illuminated the path without forcing it. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Elias felt a shift. He understood the gravity of the trial. The trial was not only about him, but about the readiness of his own spirit to step into the unknown, to trust life beyond what he could see, and to embrace a connection that transcended species, culture, and history. He realized that this trial was the moment when the seed of a new future could be planted, fragile, uncertain, and yet full of possibility, and that planting would require courage, empathy, and wisdom. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the quiet hum of the chamber, the gentle flow of her energy, and the weight of countless lives resting on the choices he would make. He was ready. The trial had begun, and the future, uncertain, vast, and full of hope, waited for him to step forward. Days had passed in the chamber, though Elias had lost count. The hum of the Aurora's reach was a constant reminder that he was still in the human world, but his mind had begun to live more and more in the world of the Queen. She had guided him through visions, through exercises of empathy, through glimpses of what a combined future could look like. Each moment tested his patience, his imagination, and his courage. But now Elias realized the trial was reaching its true challenge, not simply understanding, but choosing. The Queen's energy pulsed softly, brighter than ever before. Her eyes, vast and luminous, held him in a gaze that made every thought feel exposed. He could not hide from her. He could not hide from himself. "You understand the possibilities," she said, her voice flowing into his mind like a stream of warmth. "You see the lives that could exist. You know the risk, the responsibility, the magnitude of what we ask. Now you must decide if you are ready to step forward." Elias's throat tightened. The trial was no longer about visions or lessons. It was about courage, the courage to act, to commit to something far beyond anything he had faced before. His mind raced. Could he do it? Could humanity accept a bridge like this? Could he himself? He turned, looking out at the stars through the chamber walls. The vast black canvas of space stretched endlessly, countless points of light that humans had only begun to understand. And among those stars, he realized, were infinite possibilities. A future where human and alien life could grow together. A future where death did not have the last word. A future where understanding and trust could reshape the galaxy. And yet, fear whispered at the edges of his mind. What if it fails? What if humanity is not ready? What if he makes the wrong choice? He closed his eyes, trying to silence the doubts. He thought of Earth, of children laughing, of people helping each other in small ways that often went unnoticed, of the stubborn resilience that defined humanity. If humanity could survive against the odds, surely he could trust them with this. Elias opened his eyes. The Queen was closer now, her glowing form reflecting in the glass as if they were two sides of the same being. Her expression was calm, but filled with a depth of hope that made his heart ache. "There is one final step," she said softly. "You must commit to understanding our essence completely. Not just our survival, but our way of life, our thoughts, our fears, our joys. Only then will you know if you are ready." And he nodded, even though she could feel his agreement regardless. The chamber filled with a soft, radiant light as the Queen extended her energy toward him. It was not physical contact, he could feel nothing with his hands, but it flowed into his mind like a river, carrying with it emotions, memories, and experiences that had never touched a human mind before. He saw her childhood, if it could be called that. He saw the games she played, the way she learned to communicate with her people, the joys of discovery and the pain of loss as generations faded. He felt the love of her family, her mentors, her companions, a complex web of connection and trust that transcended anything he had experienced. And then he saw the collapse of her world. He felt the slow dimming of cities, the fading of energy streams, the quiet despair as entire populations vanished. But he also felt hope carried not by weapons or technology, but by the courage and willingness of a single human to step forward. Tears pricked Elias's eyes. He realized this was no longer about survival alone. It was about trust, about connection, about the willingness to step into the unknown not for personal gain, but for something far greater. I see," he whispered. His voice was almost lost in the hum of the chamber. "I understand more than I ever could have imagined." The Queen's glow brightened, reflecting a warmth that was almost like a smile. "Then you are ready," she said. "But the final test is not understanding. It is choice. You must decide if you will act to create the bridge, to accept the future we could build together." Elias's mind spun. The decision was enormous, heavier than any he had ever carried. Yet, within that weight, he also felt something new. Clarity. The path was not easy, and it would not be simple, but it was right. He looked at the Queen, at her luminous eyes and radiant presence, and he saw not an alien demanding something impossible, but a being reaching out for trust, for connection, for hope. "I will do it," he said finally, his voice steady. "I will step forward. I will help build the bridge." The chamber pulsed with energy, the lights flickering as if the ship itself recognized the moment. The Queen's form shimmered, brighter and more beautiful than ever before, as if she too felt the significance of his choice. "Then the trial is complete," she said. "And the future begins." Elias felt a rush of emotions: relief, awe, hope, and a profound sense of responsibility. He had chosen not just for himself, but for humanity, for her species, and for the future that would now be possible. He turned to look at the control deck. The crew had been watching silently, and now, seeing his decision, they let out breaths they hadn't realized they had been holding. There were no words that could describe what had just happened. In that moment, Elias realized that the trial had not been about fear or hesitation. It had been about trust, trust in himself, trust in humanity, and trust in the unknown. The Queen extended her energy toward him once more, and this time he reached back. The connection was immediate, flowing, and full of meaning. They shared thoughts, emotions, and understanding in a way that transcended words. He felt her gratitude, her hope, and her joy. And he felt something new, a sense of purpose unlike anything he had ever known. This was no longer a mission. It was a commitment, a promise, and a step into a future that neither species could yet fully imagine. As the light of the chamber settled into a steady glow, Elias knew that the real work had only just begun. The trial had tested him, shown him the weight of his choices, and now it had granted him the clarity to act. He would return to the control deck, to humanity, to the rest of the world, carrying not only the knowledge of what was possible, but the courage to see it through. The Queen's voice came one last time, gentle but firm. "You have chosen wisely. The path forward will be difficult, but it will also be full of wonder. You are ready, Elias Ward. Together, we will step into the future." Elias nodded, feeling the truth of her words in every fiber of his being. He had faced storms in space, isolation and uncertainty before, but this was different. This was a storm of possibilities, a journey of connection, and a bridge that would carry life across the stars. He stood tall, the chamber glowing softly around him. Outside, the crew waited, unsure of what they would see next, but ready to witness the beginning of a new era. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the Queen, the weight of responsibility, and the hope that now burned brighter than the stars themselves. The turning point had arrived, and there was no turning back. Time on the Aurora's reach seemed to bend after Elias made his decision. Days merged into nights, though the stars outside never changed. The hum of the ship became a familiar rhythm, almost like the heartbeat of a living thing. The Queen's presence was now constant, not as a test, but as a guide, a companion, and a bridge between her species and humanity. Elias stood again in the chamber, feeling the soft pulse of her energy. It was no longer intimidating or overwhelming. It was familiar, comforting, a reminder of why he had chosen this path, and why humanity now carried a new responsibility that would echo through generations. The Queen's light shifted gently, reflecting her thoughts in patterns that humans could not entirely interpret, but that Elias could sense with his mind. It was a language of emotion and intention, and in it he felt gratitude, pride, and hope. "You have done more than survive the trial," she said, her thoughts flowing into his mind like a gentle stream. "You have embraced possibility. You have chosen not only for yourself, but for the future of both our peoples." Elias nodded. "It feels enormous. I can see the possibilities, but the weight is heavy. The responsibility is real." "It is always heavy," the Queen replied softly. "But responsibility and opportunity often come together. That is the nature of life and of survival." The crew watched from the control deck, still in awe. They had been trained for emergencies, for crises, for survival situations, but nothing could have prepared them for this. Humanity was witnessing a bridge being formed, not with treaties or technology, but with trust, empathy, and understanding. Elias looked out at the stars. He realized that the trial had been more than a test of courage. It had been a test of vision. Could he imagine a future where two species could thrive together? Could he accept change, uncertainty, and the unknown? Could humanity step into a new era without fear? He had answered yes. The Queen's glow pulsed warmly. "Now we begin the work. Not with force, but with learning. You will help our species understand yours. We will help yours understand us. Together we will create the bridge." For the first time, Elias felt something he hadn't expected, a sense of excitement, of wonder, and of purpose beyond himself. It was as if a new life had opened before him, one full of possibilities, lessons, and discoveries. In the following weeks, the ship became a center of learning, exchange, and exploration. The Queen shared knowledge of her species, their arts, their sciences, their philosophies, and their culture. Elias shared human knowledge, from medicine to technology, from ethics to history. The crew became participants in something larger than themselves, witnesses to the birth of a bridge that had never existed before. One evening, as the Aurora's reach drifted near a cluster of uninhabited planets, Elias sat quietly in the chamber. The Queen's glow filled the space with soft light. She communicated not with words but with emotions, patience, curiosity, and trust. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, her thoughts flowing like a gentle current, "what it will feel like for the first children of the bridge?" Elias smiled softly. "I do. I wonder what they will see, how they will understand the world, and what dreams they will carry. I hope they will feel both our histories and choose their own paths." "They will," she said. "They will carry both. They will inherit lessons from both worlds, and they will grow with the understanding that life is not only survival but connection." Elias leaned back against the chamber wall thinking. The trial had tested him, shaped him, and given him clarity. But now the true challenge had begun, to nurture, guide, and participate in the growth of something new. He remembered the fear, the hesitation, the doubts that had haunted him in the early days. And he realized that every step of the journey, the trial, the visions, the understanding, had prepared him for this moment. He had been ready all along, though he had not known it. As the days turned into weeks, communication between humans and the Queen's species deepened. Both sides learned patience, empathy, and respect. The crew began to see the future not as something they would inherit by accident, but as something they could actively shape. The Queen taught Elias about the rhythms of her world, the way her species measured time, their connection to the energy flows of their planet, and the delicate balance that allowed their cities to flourish. Elias taught her about humanity's ingenuity, adaptability, and the stubborn optimism that often defied logic. Through these exchanges, Elias realized that the bridge was not a single act, but a continuous process. It was learning, listening, and growing together. It was acknowledging differences while embracing common ground. It was understanding that survival was not enough. Life had to have meaning, and that meaning could be shared. One day, while observing a simulation of hybrid life forms, beings that combined human and alien traits, Elias felt a surge of emotion. He could see children laughing, learning, exploring the stars together. They moved with grace, curiosity, and wonder. They carried the history of both species in their hearts, and they carried hope for a future that no one had imagined before. "They will be the true legacy," the Queen said, sensing his thoughts. "Not the bridge alone, but the lives it creates." Elias nodded, "And they will need guidance, wisdom, and trust. Just as we needed the trial to understand ourselves and each other." She pulsed softly, like a nod. "Yes. And humanity has already shown it is ready to carry this responsibility. That is why the trial succeeded." Elias felt a quiet pride, not in himself, but in what humanity could become. He had once thought of humans as small, fragile, and limited. Now, he saw them as capable of reaching across the unknown, building connections, and embracing responsibility in ways that could change the course of life itself. The months passed, and the Aurora's reach continued its journey. Other ships would follow, the bridge would expand. And everywhere Elias went, he carried the memory of the trial, the test of courage, empathy, and trust, as a reminder that even the smallest choices could have the greatest consequences. One evening he stood in the chamber, looking at the stars and feeling the Queen's presence beside him. "I understand now," he said. "The trial was never about fear. It was about trust, about hope, about the willingness to step forward into something unknown and make it real." "Yes," she replied. "And now, you will help make it real." Elias smiled. "Then let's begin." The chamber glowed softly, the hum of the ship mingling with the rhythm of their thoughts. Outside, the stars continued to shine, distant yet inviting, as if watching the birth of a new era. The future stretched endlessly before them, full of possibility, challenge, and hope. Elias realized something profound. The trial had been important, yes, but the legacy, the real work, was only beginning. It was in every lesson taught, every bond formed, and every life touched by the bridge between humans and the queen species. And he knew that humanity would rise to the challenge, because they always had. They had survived against odds, reached for the stars, and now, together with the queen species, they would step into a future defined not by fear, but by trust, connection, and shared hope. He looked at her one last time that evening, feeling the depth of the connection they had forged. It was a quiet, powerful bond, not of force or obligation, but of mutual understanding and respect. "The legacy will not be mine alone," he said. "It will belong to all of us, to our children, to our species, to the bridge we build together." The queen pulsed warmly. "And it will shine brighter than any star you have ever seen, because it is built not just with life, but with love, trust, and hope." Elias nodded. He had faced the trial, embraced the challenge, and now he stepped forward into the true journey, one of creation, guidance, and legacy. Outside the chamber, the stars waited, infinite and full of possibility. Within, a bridge had been born, fragile yet strong, radiant with hope, and destined to shape the future in ways no one could yet imagine. The legacy of the trial was clear. Courage, empathy, and connection could transcend species, space, and history. The bridge would grow, and humanity, together with the queen species, would become something new, something extraordinary. And in that quiet chamber, amidst the hum of the ship and the glow of alien energy, Elias felt the truth of it all. The future was theirs to shape. Together,